Hey guys, with Descent Off-Road, we finally got enough seat time in our new Land Cruiser 250 that I'm confident in giving a kind of an overview on all the products we've put on, the vehicle as a whole, kind of the items we've built for the truck, the aftermarket products from companies that we've worked with on this build, also our first impressions, or our impressions in general, on how the vehicle performs both on off-road. Also, prior to being built on 38s, we've got some seat time on 35s too, so we can touch on that. So first thing I want to go over is the armor that we built for this vehicle, starting in the front. So this is not going to be, again, our production products for the Land Cruiser 250 platform. We did a lot of cutting, a lot of trimming, a lot of modifications to get the clearance for this. And again, this is obviously built as more of a rock crawler. We are not opposed to doing more of these in the future. For the time being, we would need the truck. So basically, you'd have to send the vehicle to us. We would do a full build, and we would do all the modifications needed to fit this. So some of those modifications on the front here is, so on the Land Cruiser 250, which is different from the 6-cylinder twin turbos like the Sequoia, the LX600, the GX, is fortunately we do not have the intercoolers in front of the tire, which did allow us to cut up and expose that tire for the harder trails. So we cut the core support. This used to come way out here. We've restructured the core support. The fender here, sheet metal used to drop down probably close to here. So we have cut the sheet metal. We've restructured the fender. We've obviously cut the fender for the larger tires, but we'll get into that later. No frame modifications were needed in the front, so that was nice. So mainly just core support, body. We've come around to the grille. So we've cut basically all of that lower grille portion. We've separated the upper grille. We have tricked the active grille shutter because we can remove that so we can fit a winch back there. So we've tricked that. The thing is still there. So no check engine lights. Everything's functioning as intended. Downside is the radiator is humongous. It's long. So there is radiator all the way down to this point. So we had to do a secondary skid. You see these grills here for airflow. So that radiator does go all the way down. Didn't really prove to be a huge problem on the Rubicon. We definitely hit this quite a bit, but we never got hung up on it. It did its job protecting everything. So while it's unfortunate, I think I would prefer to have that tire clearance, that approach angle there, even though we had to lose some there with how they've engineered the intercooler and the radiator, everything to fit in the middle. So that kind of covers everything that we did to fit our bumper. In that bumper, we've got partners that we work with. We sell their items. We love the Come Up winches. They're our favorite. We sell those almost exclusively. We've used them for years. We've had no issues with them. Our customers have had no issues with them. We've probably sold thousands at this point. So we're a big fan of the Come Up winches. So we're running the Come Up Solo 9.5. This winch is great. This vehicle's a little bit lighter than a typical overland build, so we went with the 9.5, which is essentially the same winch as the 12.5, a little less pulling power, but it's also faster. With that, we've got rigid 6-inch 360s. These are a driving pattern. Again, one of my favorite lights. A lot of bang for the buck with these. Down here, we've got a dual function rigid 4-inch 360, so that's got an amber and a white. Then we've got our Agency 6 winch shackle, and we also run some more Agency 6 stuff on the rack. But all of these companies we've been working with a long time. We love their products. We love working with them. Great US made, great products. All right, so we've got a full set of skid plates. Obviously this is ours, Descent Off-Road. These are the prototype sets. There's a few little spacers and stuff that won't be there on the production version. But we're kind of testing a theory here that if we go minimal on the skids, we'll actually hit them a lot less. So you can see we've really focused on clearance and not necessarily covering items that I'm not concerned of damaging. So we do need to do something about these cam tabs and bolts here. So we'll reinforce that, but I'm not too worried about this cross member. It's pretty beefy. And then we also have stepped around and gain clearances around where we can. For our type of wheeling, the flat belly doesn't work good. We do a lot of snow. I don't like the whole belly to sink down and hit on the snow and create a suction. So we like to step the skids around and gain clearance wherever we can. That also gives me less surface tension when we do sink in the mud or snow. All right, so moving on from the front to our new step slider for the Land Cruiser 250. We will have a version of this for the GX 550 as well. So we put these definitely through their paces on the Rubicon Trail. We beat the crap out of them. We came down on them hard. It was supporting more than the full weight of the vehicle at multiple times. We've got an aluminum super grip coated tread plate, so this makes a great step for getting up to the roof rack or getting into the vehicle. Our frame brackets are made of 3/8 steel to the frame and 1/4 inch outside. We've got 4 of those, so very beefy. The one thing to note is these are modular, so this whole shell actually removes off of the frame brackets. So if you really beat these up, I mean, they've got dings and dents and bruises from the Rubicon Trail, still totally functional. Most of it's cosmetic. But these could be removed and replaced for a very low cost. So we may end up offering those in the future as a replacement item. Very simple to do. Also, even if you don't want to replace them, if we just wanted to pull them off to touch up the paint or respray them, easy to do so. You don't have to remove the whole slider off of there. So moving on to the roof rack. So this is our roof rack to send off-road. We have most of our roof racks are very similar, as you can tell. We've got a 40-inch rigid light bar in the front. We've got 6, so 3 total each side rigid spreaders. We make these mounts here, so these are adjustable, which is pretty cool. So you can shine them down when you're at camp. They're not right in your face. If you want to use them while you're driving, you can point them out. We've got our Agency 6 shovel, Agency 6 grab handles, shovel mount. These match the gray on the winch shackle in the front. Moving on to here, we've got a couple Pelican cases mounted up top. So these actually carry I've got all my recovery gear in here. Pelican has these awesome mully panels. And what I really like about these, which is different from others, is you can actually remove the entire panel. Which is super cool for being able to strap your gear or bringing that whole panel down, taking what you want and putting it back on. Much easier than trying to get those straps around those panels while they're up here. So we've got our Treaty Yoke stuff, we've got our Agency 6 stuff, we got Agency 6 shackles in here, we got their winch pulley, our cabled remote, first aid kit, axe. So you can fit quite a bit in here. Other side is the same setup, but we've got our spare parts in there right now. So spare CVs, spare tie rod ends. It's about all we can get currently to carry us. So our roof rack is all aluminum. We use 3/16 on the side rails. The load bars we do a little bit different rather than the typical T-slot extruded aluminum, which in my opinion, they're very strong but not very rigid. We do a formed load bar, so that's 1/8 inch aluminum. And then we have those slots in the middle there, and we supply the racks with some drop-in nuts, which gives you the ability to have kind of the adjustability like you would with the T-slot, but you also don't lose the ability to through bolt accessories, which has been a huge plus in my opinion. All right, moving on to the rear bumper. So this was actually the more tricky one here. We definitely wanted to get the extreme clearance style. There is a lot of plastic and a lot of frame back here. So you can see still we've got frame hanging down, body mount hanging down. We actually broke this body mount bolt. So as we gain that clearance. So this is a prototype that we will likely be redoing. The bars here, we will keep those. They're a little too close to the tail light. We've actually cracked one of our tail lights over there just from ramming into a boulder. But what I want to do, most likely will do on this build at least, is we'll cut down this frame, we'll kind of recess the body mounts, get rid of all this low hanging section here. Once we do that, the clearance on this is amazing. We hardly touched the bumper at all, which was great. So this is not going to have a swing outs on it. We do have rigid lights for backup lights. We will be offering a more production friendly version. The other thing to note is we did cut, like I said, we cut the frame off, we cut the entire cross member. Factory cross member comes out here. The hitch is welded in. It drops probably down to this point. So we cut all that out so we could gain this clearance, tuck the bumper in tight. So again, we will be doing a production version that does not require those modifications. However, it will not have anywhere near the clearance gains that this one does. So let's move on to suspension. We've been asked a lot of questions on what did we do for the suspension. So we reached out to Icon when we had this vehicle ordered. And as you may know, we got this vehicle pretty early on. So that's why I believe we are the first, still the only built in this way. So we reached out to Icon. They wanted to develop products for it. So we had the vehicle. We've been working with them on finalizing the production product. So all of this stuff's prototype, but I think they are very close to having production versions for this platform. We've got their aluminum track bar. We've got their shocks. We've got their bump stops. We've got their aluminum lower control arms or trailing arms. Those took a beating. I was very impressed and happy with how those held up on the Rubicon. One thing to note underneath here is the factory shock mounts are terrible. They hang down very low. We hit those a lot. I actually even pinched my tire in a rock in the shock mount and almost, you can see right here, took a pretty big chunk out of it. So we're gonna have to do something with that. That's something to consider with this platform, which is the same for really all the new platforms. These do hang a little lower than the Land Cruiser 200. So the reason they do that is, I'm assuming this right here. So if anyone's replaced shocks on some of the 100 series Land Cruisers, 200 series Land Cruisers, this shock eye or shock head is way up in the wheel well, very hard to get to. You can't really get to that bolt. So with that down lower, this is super easy to get to, but we do sacrifice some ground clearance on that mount. So in the front, all Icon stuff as well. We've got their billet upper control arms. These are actually the same as the 24 Tacoma, along with actually the rear links as well. Shocks are similar, but are going to be different, or the coilover. We're set to about 3 inches over stock. One thing we did differently with talking with Icon and their R&D department is the Land Cruiser actually had less travel due to the CVs than the Tacoma or the GX. So we had ordered some Tacoma CV axles. We compared them with the factory. The Land Cruiser ones are what we have in the box up top for our spares. And we replaced them with the new 24 Tacoma CVs. They were bigger, higher angle, just a better CV in general. So super odd, but a very easy upgrade to do. That also allows us to gain roughly 2 inches of down travel, I believe. So they're pushing close to 12 inches of travel on the front with the extended coilover and the Tacoma CVs, which is great. We're nearing long travel status there with only replacing uppers, no lowers, not changing the width of the vehicle. Okay, so one thing we keep getting, and we are well aware that this is the Prado, is people seem to be very upset that it's being called a Land Cruiser. But this is different from any Prado in the past. The way this is built, so many parts are comparable to the Land Cruiser 300, the LX 600. And just looking under here, sure, some of the parts are smaller, but when you look at the A-arms, they're super beefy. The tie rod ends are more beefy than any previous Prado. The axles, the spindles are beefy. The suspension components are tough. We do have the smaller diff, so we're 8-inch in the front, 8.2 in the rear. However, the front diff is a steel housing versus the aluminum housing in the Tacoma. Whether that's better or not, we don't know. We did successfully run the entire Rubicon on 38s all the way through the trail, taking the hard lines. We were not easy on it, and we did not break a thing. So I think that says a lot for the robustness of the factory parts on this platform. And so far, we've been quite impressed with that. We were not anticipating making it through with no braking. So for the tires and wheels, we'll touch on that real quick. So we're running a 38 13.5 Nitto Trail Grappler. This is easily becoming one of my favorite tires. It's a very aggressive mud terrain, but super quiet on the road. They balance out easy and perform really great in just about every terrain. And then we got the Icon Recon Pros. Right now, our protective rings are off. Those took a pretty good beating. We broke a few on the Rubicon, but this is their interlock. This is a +25 offset. And then we got their interlock here. This actually worked real well. We are down to about 7-ish PSI on the trail. We got on some pretty hard pushes on that sidewall. No issues there. I'm also running these on my 100 series Land Cruiser. I've been down to 2 PSI in the snow on those. We've never lost a bead. So pretty stoked with those wheels. That tire setup's worked great for our uses. All right, so now we're going to touch on the tire fitment. Many still don't think we've actually fit these tires on here. But again, we took it through Rubicon. We've had this thing flexed out. We actually have almost zero rubbing whatsoever with the 38s. So what did we do to achieve that? So if we come to the front here, we've actually cut the factory over fender, which came down to about here. We cut it right above that line. So this is actually a factory rolled edge, which is pretty cool. So this fender's still got some rigidity to it. We've had to remove the inner fender liner. We have had to obviously remove the washer reservoir. So we've got one up in the hood now. We've relocated, or we didn't relocate, we put a different one up in the hood. We didn't have to cut any firewall. I did need to do a little bit of a cab mount chop. We will be building some custom inner fenders, so that still is yet to be done. But for now, we fully fit. I've got zero rubbing. I've touched maybe a tiny bit in a few areas here and there under extreme articulation, but very happy with that. As we move on to the rear was a bit more tricky. So we didn't have to do a ton of cutting to clearance the tires, but the shape of this fender doesn't really allow for minimal trimming. So in other words, I couldn't really just trim where I needed to fit the tire without it looking goofy. So we cut about 1 inch out of this whole area. Since we removed the flare in the front, we didn't want the look of partial flare in the rear. So we pulled that flare off, we plated all this in, did the body work necessary. We did actually have to cut into the door as well. We have got our new inner fenders in, so we've moved those up. We 3D scanned that. We made new sheet metal inner fenders to seal that all off. On the other side, it was a little more tricky as well because we have the factory AC and heater hoses. We did have to pull the interior apart and make a bracket to raise those hoses up and then put a new inner fender. So we had to raise those hoses, reseal everything, put the inner fender in. Actually, from the factory, it wasn't sealed. We were getting a lot of dust intrusion from that area anyway. So we've got it actually sealed better than it was from the factory. So one complaint, one thing that honestly sucks for us as well is the lack of tailgate. I think we really missed on that one. I know they've got their reasons for doing that, but in the back here, we can kind of make up for no tailgate with this air down gear up system. We've got this table here, which is super nice. Doesn't replace a tailgate, but definitely makes up for it. So this is their Land Cruiser 250 system. We worked with them to get this developed. They actually built this off of a 3D scan. Fits perfect. I think they've now got it finalized on their website live to order. We went with the drawer fridge here. So this is a 30-liter drawer fridge, which is actually a perfect setup for this. It holds enough, I don't have anything in it now, but it holds enough for, as long as you're not going too crazy on what you want to eat, it holds enough for the weekend, a couple days for a couple people. As far as the drinks go, we don't fill it with drinks. We pull a drink out of the drawer and just replenish it as we take one out. Super awesome setup, maintains the full platform on the top. Got their full drawer here, and then that extra table there. They've got a little tabletop or cutting board here. You can fit a lot in these drawers as well. So I keep my cooking stuff, and this is again just kind of the basic trail essentials for cooking meals with. We got our Jetboil, chairs, some extra space. The air down gear up, I do like that we have the drawer dividers, which is sweet to be able to keep this stuff organized. So one of the cool features is their sleeper platform. I believe they call this their convertible platform. But this will actually, I can fold the second row down, you leave the second rows in place. This is self-supporting, it's on drawer slides, and it slides over the seats. So super simple to set up. I'll show you right here. Seats fold down there. Do that on both sides. you got little brackets it locks into place. You flip those in place. You got a nice sleeper platform. Throw your mattress on. I put my head on that end, climb in through the side door, leave the hatch open, or leave the glass open, sorry. There's no actual, one bummer about this vehicle for sleeping inside is there are no way to open the glass or the hatch from the inside. So what we do, or what I do, I should say, so you can't open up this hatch glass. I've got my head here, my pillow, and this will let you kind of shut it to a point to where you don't have to latch it. So I can prop this open different areas to allow airflow. So that actually works pretty good, was less of a problem than I thought it was gonna be. All right, so another thing we did to the interior, to our sleeping area, is we added these new lights. Actually, we found them, we saw them on an Instagram ad actually. And we're all for trying new things, trying quality product. We typically will not give a review on it till we have some time with it. So we've had these on since the build was new. We've used them, pretty stoked with them so far. So Kingpin equipped, we've got these 40-inch light bars. We've attached that right to the hatch here. This actually works perfect on the 250 platform because it tucks into this little recess for the hybrid battery when you shut it. So this does not hit anything. These are aimable. So I can point it out at my camp. I can point it into here. I can point it down right on my cooking area. So we've also added their 12-inch lights, one to each side. So these work pretty well for an interior lighting when you're set up in here sleeping, or just to get your gear out of the back. And these are aimable as well. So I can actually point them out the glass and use them for lighting out there. We've mounted their switch into the third row seatbelt area, which worked out perfect. So these are just a little touch switch, super cool. Lights are dimmable. So you hold that button and they will dim and it will stay at your last setting. So we've got one on each side for each light. So yeah, super stoked with these lights. We will, super stoked with the quality, the function. I believe these are only white. I believe they have a white and a red in the works, and then maybe a white and an amber, which will be cool having the dual function. So yeah, we're gonna start utilizing these in a lot of our builds and builds for our customers. All right, so currently how we are powering the lights, the fridge, is we're using a power cube, lithium power cube from Wagentech. This is a great option for a less permanent option. So you can take that cube out. I can move it from vehicle to vehicle. I've got it wired in very easily to my battery for it to charge while it is, while the car's running. I've also got the 120 charger wired up and plugged into my factory inverter. So it's a little bit of a pain because that inverter you have to turn on every time you start the vehicle, but as long as you remember to, you can keep that topped off. It'll still run the fridge for several days before running dead. But with that being said, we will be going to a more permanent solution for this vehicle. So that'll be coming out. We've got a 320 amp hour lithium battery coming from Dakota Lithium. So super stoked to try that one out. It's in a Group 34 casing, so very small package, a lot of power. We will be using actually a Wagentech DC-DC charger to power that. So more to come once we get that system finalized. All right, so powering all of our lights with the exception of the Kingpin equipped lights in the back. So all of our rigid lights are powered off of our Switch Pro. So we got a 8-switch panel. Cool thing here is actually, sometimes it's really difficult to find out or find where to put these panels. I don't know if this was Toyota's intention or not, but this section here around that switch panel removes it one piece. This side panel comes off. So I didn't have to pull apart any of this dash. I was able to pull this off, mount it, drill my hole, route my cable up through. Super easy and a almost perfect position for getting easily access to those switches while you're driving. So that was a pretty cool setup. I'm sure some companies, we might even as well make an actual bezel that just replaces that gives a little cleaner fitment, but honestly, just mounting the panel right to that is pretty clean in and of itself. So on the engine side, our Switch Pro runs through. We use these terminal blocks. Our brains for the Switch Pro are mounted up under, so we've made this custom bracket to fit right in the middle here. We've ran these terminal blocks off of the battery, so those run all the way from the front up to here. Again, the battery is in the back, which is a little inconvenient. then our winch is actually wired to these terminal blocks. So now we have a full high amp 12 volt circuit under the hood for mounting any additional accessories. These terminal blocks on the Switch Pro, this allows us to easily organize that switch. So we can simply move wires around if we want to change what switch does what on the Switch Pro. All right, so the one thing I do want to touch on, which actually has been a huge success, people have loved it. We've got a very little hate on the kind of the overall graphics and design of this build. And I thought when we went with such a bright color, kind of a wild color, that we'd get kind of a 50-50. People would love it or hate it. But ultimately, this is totally different from what we would normally do. We typically keep it pretty low key. From the get-go, when they first announced this vehicle, they first showed it, first thing I thought of was just the retro look, the round headlights, the old Land Cruisers. So right away I knew I wanted to do something like this. So we did. It's inspired. This was the closest color we could get to an old FJ40 color. It's definitely a little more teal. The graphics are inspired off of the HJ61 Land Cruiser graphics. The turbo thing was kind of a last minute, thought it'd be cool, and I think it turned out pretty cool, being that it is actually a turbo. So the old HJ61s would say turbo there as well, or actually down a little lower. We changed up the position. Went with the white wheels, like the FJ40s would have come with white wheels, the white grille, the white roof. It's actually technically a very light gray. But again, that's where the inspiration came for the overall look of the design. Beyond Wraps in Santa Ana killed it with the wrap job. Couldn't recommend him more. Definitely knows what he's doing. He removed all of the body panels. All of these corners are wrapped around underneath the trim pieces. He removes the mirrors. He removes the door handles. We got asked multiple times if this was a paint job, which is pretty cool. Normally you can tell when a vehicle's wrapped. So when this was just an idea in my head, I mean, I envisioned what I wanted it to look like, but ultimately nothing is better than being able to see it in person prior to spending the money on doing it. So we hit up our friend Adam at Box Rocket Designs. He was able to literally do everything for us. How close this actual build is to the render is pretty amazing, but he could change the colors, he could put the graphics on. He got exactly how we wanted it on that render prior to doing anything on the vinyl. So that is the first time we've done something like that, and I was pretty stoked. We'll definitely be using him again to do that, so we can envision and see what the end result's going to look like before we actually do it. All right, so now we've gone through everything we've done on the truck, all the products we've put on there to get it where it's at. So now I want to touch on some things we found while driving it on the road, wheeling it. We've wheeled it hard. We've got not a ton of miles, but we're about 3,000 of pretty hard miles so far. So we've got a pretty good grasp, and I think can give a fairly educated opinion on it. So things we like, things we don't like. Honestly, when we got this, when I bought it, I was pretty sure I was not going to like the 4-cylinder. I was not going to like the drivetrain. I was sure that as soon as we put bigger tires, as soon as we put weight on it, it was going to be gutless. And honestly, it's been the total opposite. So let's start with, honestly, we'll start with things we don't like, because that honestly is a lot shorter list than the things we like. So we'll move around to the doors here. Probably first thing I noticed, and people actually ask, is just how's the door sound? That's always been something with the Land Cruisers. They just sound solid. We don't really have that with this. I don't know if that picks up. Not a problem per se, but that was probably the first thing I noticed that I did not like when I bought the vehicle. The other thing, as we walk around back, is the obvious no tailgate or lack of tailgate. Definitely sucks. We use the tailgates a lot on all the older Land Cruisers. Again, we've got the drawers kind of make up for that. There's not anything we can do about it. We don't have the tailgate. So that was something I do not like. But again, it's not really that big of an issue. As we move around to the interior, so as we move on to the inside, there's not a ton that I don't like in here. Actually, I'm pretty happy with the layout, happy with where I could fit the Switch Pro. We do have actual buttons for a lot of the functions, which is super cool. We got actual buttons for our locker, our traction control. Not a huge fan of the electric parking brakes. again, they works fine. It works as intended. Just personally not a fan of them yet. Our Sequoia has it. All the new vehicles have them. The other thing I did notice, not really any good locations to mount even a phone. So I've got my quad lock mount over here, but there's just nowhere good to put it. There's no vents really to put a vent mount in without blocking buttons. So that was a little bummer, but over here honestly isn't that bad. Otherwise, the leg room, the space, comfortable. One thing you will know on the 1958 editions, you will not get any padded armrest plastics. That's a little uncomfortable when you got your knee up against it. The other trim models do have padding there. I do actually like the cloth seats. Those are super comfortable. And the rear leg room is actually pretty good. I'm tall, I'm 6'4", but my seat is all the way back right there. You can still fit an adult back there. My kids fit back there, no problem. So I was happy about that. So the other thing, which is really just annoyances that I do not like about this, and maybe we can get in there and program some of this stuff, which I'm sure we can. We've done it on the Sequoia. The seatbelt alarms are obnoxious. They do not disengage when you're in 4 low. As soon as you take them off, it starts beeping at you almost instantly, and it gets louder, louder, faster, faster. It does not stop. So that's been annoying. Sometimes you got to pull the seatbelt off when you're on the trail, and just the nannies in general. So when I turn off, so let's say we put it in 4 low, it automatically turns off a lot of the safety systems, which is great. It should do, but it gives me a warning that my safety systems are turned off. So if I want to pull up my engine temp gauge or my boost gauge, you can pull those up, but then you constantly have to be scrolling out of the warning that your safety systems are turned off. I've not found any settings to change that. So again, it's not a problem, it's just annoying. Hopefully someone will come up with some sort of a tuner or something that we can play with and mess with those things. And to touch on those warnings and stuff, while they're annoying, just note that most new vehicles are the same way. It's not just a Toyota or not just a Land Cruiser thing. You're gonna have this in just about any new vehicle. So just something we found. All right, so our impressions on the powertrain, the drivetrain. Again, when I bought this, I thought for sure I was gonna hate the 4-cylinder. We've got the new Sequoia with the twin turbo 6 hybrid. And honestly, it's been the total opposite. I was ready to rag on it. I thought for sure, again, it was gonna be gutless as soon as we put the tires on it. But been the total opposite. Power delivery is smooth. The shifting is better than any other Toyota vehicle I've driven, even new or old. Power delivery is better. It's instant, it's there, it's controllable, it's predictable. Honestly, power delivery is far better than even our Sequoia. The power is actually great. Like, it has no problem spinning these tires, no problem with the additional weight. Fuel mileage is decent for Toyota. We're about 15 with how it sits now of on the road, on the trail. It used a little more gas than I thought on Rubicon. I think we put about 14 gallons driving from Georgetown to Rubicon. So we were actually getting pretty low. I almost needed to carry extra fuel. The hybrid is great. The extra torque, the line torque from that is amazing. It takes up any turbo lag. There's no lag in this whatsoever. When you go to take off, it moves. In the rocks, it's amazing. There's no other vehicle I would put 38s on, stock gears, and even want to take it on a trail like the Rubicon. And this would benefit from lower gears, but with this, it was super controllable. I could keep the RPMs where I need. I could crawl up over a rock controllably. It worked really well. The traction controls work great as well. So this one being the 1958, we do not have the MTS. So I can't really speak to the performance of that quite yet. We do have a first edition we'll be testing out a little bit, but the traction control just out of the box works pretty darn good. We did find some limitations when you got a tire fully in the air. Did seem hard to get it to activate and spin the wheel with traction. If the tire's not fully in the air, it worked really well. Obviously we do have the rear locker, which is some. The crawl control is smooth. I don't know if anyone's used it, anyone watching this has used it before in some of the older Land Cruisers. Super obnoxious. It works well, but you typically don't want to use it because it's loud. You cannot even hear this one kick in. So it's smooth. You can see the light flashing, you know it's doing something, but you don't feel it. You don't hear the ABS kick in. You feel the track it's providing. So very impressed with that. Very impressed with the power delivery. Very impressed with the performance, both on and off road. It blows any previous Land Cruiser away as far as the power goes. I mean, my 200, this blows it away. We were out wheeling with 200s, 100s. And again, I love them. We love the older cruisers. This will never be a replacement for the older cruisers, but I think it's a very good addition to that lineup. So far, very impressed. Can't speak for the reliability quite yet. I've got some faith in the brand, so I'm fingers crossed it's going to hold up. But performance-wise, so far, reliability has proven well on the hard stuff, so we're pretty stoked about it. So another thing I know, this does have the electric assist steering, so it's no longer hydraulic. Again, time will tell the robustness of that system, but as far as the steerability on these large tires was amazing. It felt like having hydro assist. I'll actually show you, even with the 38s, we're on loose dirt, so it's not as great of a comparison. But one finger, we can spin this lock to lock on the 38s. Super smooth, super easy. And the same in the rocks. All right, so things we don't like about this powertrain, and I thought this list was gonna be a lot longer. Honestly, the only complaint that I have so far is the lack of gearing for downhill. So the gearing is a bit high. Hasn't been a problem while crawling on flat ground or up a hill, but downhill, a lot of riding the brakes. The downhill assist works great, but that uses the brakes to slow you down, so you're still heating the brakes. Transmission tends to get hot pretty quick. We've not overheated yet, but there's a lot of times where I wish I could be in 4 high. It's got plenty of power to do so, but the transmission gets hot too quick. So I find myself having to go into 4 low well before I feel I should need to go into 4 low. The other thing is, while you're in 4 low, it does not let you get above 4th gear, I believe. So that was a little annoying. It kind of forces you to go into 4 low because the transmission's getting hot, but then also doesn't let you get past 4th gear. So your top speed in 4 low is pretty slow. I think just due to the size of the engine alone, we're not gonna have that same engine braking that you're gonna have in the V8 Land Cruisers or even the straight 6. So that was my biggest pet peeve, I think, out in Colorado on those passes coming down Corkscrew. It was a lot of riding the brakes. Brakes are pretty good size, might not be a problem, but typically in my 200, I would be low 1st gear and hardly ever touch the brakes. So again, I think that's really my only complaint of the drivetrain so far.